My name is Daphne O'Dell, and I was born in China, and I was 5 years old when we came back from China to the United States, and I sat on Virgil Robinson's lap all the way from the boat to St. Helena. And I fell in love with all of the grandchildren and the parents and everybody in the White family right away. And it was fun being part of the White family. We had reunions all the time, and it was such fun just getting together and kissing everybody. My father and mother were Henry and Margaret White, and I loved them dearly. And we lived in the building that May Lacey and Willie White lived in, and that's where my father grew up. Some of the things I remember about Rosehaven was living in an apartment right across the hall from where my favorite person, Dorothy White, lived. And in fact, we sat on the porch that is part of the front part of the apartments on either side. And we used to link our little fingers together across cardboard. I remember that very vividly. And Dorothy and I had so much fun together. And a couple of girls that we kept our friendship way into the future until she died. And she was the beautiful one. And I always thought she was a special girl. And even in school, we would try to do things together, and we enjoyed each other's company very much. As children, one of the things that Dorothy and I liked to do was to slide down the wooden slide that Willie White made, and he made it just special. And in fact, I have a moving picture of myself going down that slide. I hope someday I'll see it. And one of the things that we used to do as a family, and I'll never forget seeing my grandfather, Willie, diving into water. And the men loved to slide down that great big slide. I have a movie picture of that too somewhere. I hope to see that someday. And the food that they served at the reunions when we got together to go to Russian River was out of this world. We just thought it was worth everything. Delicious. One of the things that I remember we had was berries, blackberries, raspberries. And I remember that my grandfather liked to make ice cream, homemade ice cream with a homemade freezer. I mean, I don't know what they call it. But anyway, it wasn't the kind you buy in the store. It was delicious. But that doesn't mean it wasn't delicious to eat ice cream that you buy in a store. It's just that homemade is always better. I remember the big rock out in front of our house at Rosehaven, and it looked like it had been chiseled, especially for little boys, because it had roads in it, and we would make the cars go along on the roads. And I know little boys love things with wheels, and so they always played with wheels on that rock, the little boys. And Sylvan and Oliver were the two little boys that I remember growing up with, and they were very special. I remember when we went to General Conference with Grandpa Willie, Winnie and I went to General Conference with Grandpa Willie, and he seemed to be very proud to take his little granddaughters to General Conference and introduce them to the big, important people that were there. And so we had the fun of seeing all these very important dignitaries at General Conference. And he was always thinking about us and not himself. And one time when he was having a birthday, we chased him around to Rosehaven and spanked him, and we have a movie of that too, somewhere. And Grandpa was fun time to spend time with, and we always thought it was wonderful that he would dive into the river to Lawrence, but it was a special trip to go swimming, and the fact that my grandparents loved to go swimming made swimming my favorite sport. I didn't learn about Ellen White until I was just a very little girl, and it was my sister Winnie that told me that we were related to this wonderful person that could write such beautiful stories about Jesus. I was not really old enough at the time that she told me about Ellen White to know what a wonderful person she was, that she loved Jesus with all her heart. And I wanted to love him too, to show him that I loved him. And so it was a special time there at Rosehaven when we talked about Ellen White. I remember I have very strong memories of Ellen White, and when I go to visit people now and tell them about the worships that we used to have and how everybody prayed, they are very greatly impressed. I was very young when my grandmother invited me to come and sleep with her, and I thought that was a wonderful, special privilege to be able to sleep with my grandmother. And I used to think of her as a perfect person. And I would, at night, in fact, going to sleep, I would think of Grandma White, think about what a perfect person she was and how I would like to be like her. I think that the reason that I considered her so perfect was because she had lots of love in her heart for me. And she treated me as a special person. And even though I had polio and limped, it never bothered her a bit. I remember thinking my mother was very clever to be able to make a Red Sea out of a shoebox and make the Egyptians. And she showed how the Egyptians fell into the Red Sea after the Israelites got all the way over. To me, that was a special trick that she had, and it was very good. And my mother left me an example of being a very good mother, because she not only loved me, she enjoyed playing and having games with all of us children. And here she made this shoebox seem like the Red Sea to me. And she taught the lesson of how God preserved his own people from the water of the Red Sea. And yet the Egyptians had to fall in, and it showed them all falling in. And that was really impressive for a little girl, 3 years old or 4 years old. When we got back from China, there was Dorothy and Catherine and Winnie and Don and me, and we were asked to sing Jesus Loves Me in Chinese for all these people sitting in church. And it's very easy to have stage fright, but we didn't have it in those days. We just sang. It went something like this. Yesu ai wa wang bu sa, in wei shan zhu gao zi wa, hao xiao ai za zhu ai xi, ai za ran ru zhu you li. Yes, zhou zhu ai wa. Yes, zhou zhu ai wa. Yes, zhou zhu ai wa. Shi san zu zhao gao zu wa. Because my father had been in China. He was a lecturer on China when we came back. And that's how he earned a living, was giving lectures. And they were very good lectures. And but we moved around a lot. And one place we moved to was the Lake Ariel. And that's where I went to start an academy. And it's funny, I guess at Lake Ariel there was a Seventh Day Adventist Academy at Lake Ariel. And we just loved living near a lake. We could go swimming in the morning. And I remember we had a boat, and we would row out in the morning in the boat to the island in the lake and have worship. And it was a very delightful experience. And that's where I went to school. And I usually got good grades, I usually fell in love with all the boys, but they never liked me. Not the ones I liked, anyway. His name was Bob. Bob was baptized and became a member of the Seventh Day Adventist Church on June 30, 1945. This event occurred in the Pasadena Seventh Day Adventist Church, and the minister who baptized him was Elder Miller Brockett, pastor of the church. Bob was a soldier in the United States Army and was stationed in the Pasadena Regional Hospital. He had met a young Seventh-day Adventist soldier while serving there, whose name was Aubrey. Aubrey had given Bob Bible studies, and as a result of the Bible studies, Bob decided to join the Seventh-day Adventist Church. At the point in time of Bob's baptism, I was a student nurse at the Glendale Adventist Hospital, then known as the Glendale Sanitarium and Hospital. I had been a good friend of Aubrey's all during my first year as a student nurse, but I had realized that there were factors in his personality that I knew I couldn't live with the rest of my life, so I had cooled off the relationship. A few weeks or months after Bob was baptized, Elder Brockett asked him to tell the story of his conversion for a worship service at the Pasadena church. My grandmother, May Lacey White, daughter-in-law of Ellen White, lived with her two sisters, Marguerite and Nora, in Pasadena, and they attended the Pasadena church. They had been present at Bob's baptism and had heard the story of his conversion in church when he presented it. Grandma told me about this wonderful young soldier who had recently been baptized and who was so bubbling over with joy in his relationship with the Lord. She said, "I wish you could meet him, Daphne." And I thought to myself, yes, he sounds like the man of my dreams. On September 2, 1945, World War II ended with a formal signing of the Japanese surrender papers aboard the American battleship Missouri in Tokyo. D-Day. Sometime in November, Bob and Aubrey were both discharged from the Army, and they made plans to attend La Sierra College and room together. I can't remember the date when I first saw Bob. It had to be sometime between the Sabbath that he told the story of his conversion and the date of his discharge from the Army. I was on duty on first floor of Glendale Adventist Hospital. First floor was arranged with two sections of the floor separated by the administrative offices, the admission office, and the patient parlor. It was Friday evening, and there was a meeting being conducted with the patients in the parlor. The chairs were all arranged with their backs facing anyone walking through the hallway to go from one part of first floor to the other. As I walked past in the course of caring for my patients, I saw two soldiers sitting in the back row. One was Aubrey, and the other had to be Bob Odell. For all I saw was the back of his head, but I knew that I loved him. Later I told him it was love at first sight, and all I saw was the back of your head. I didn't meet him face to face until later, and I don't remember the exact date. Before he started the second semester at La Sierra College in January of 1946, I took a city bus from Glendale to Pasadena to attend the Pasadena church and to visit my grandmother. It was there that Aubrey introduced me to his friend, Bob Odell. I found him to be as handsome and charming and as enthusiastic a Christian as Grandma had described him to be. But alas, he was going off to college, and when would I ever see him again? In March of that year, there was a youth congress held in Pasadena Civic Auditorium, and Carmen and John cooperated with me in a little plan to invite one of the student nurses in our class and Bob and Aubrey to join us in a sixth to attend the youth congress and to go out to eat together afterward. John and Carmen must have had a car because I know none of the rest of us did. I can't remember who sat next to whom, but I do remember it was heaven just to be in Bob's presence. My cousin Dorothy, who is also in nurses training in Glendale, invited me to go with her to attend the graduation exercises at La Sierra College in May of that year. Her mother and father drove us to the college, where Dorothy's sister Kay was living in one of the men's dormitories with her husband, Barney Matheson, who was one of the deans of men at the college. At the close of the consecration service, I ran into Aubrey in the hall, and probably Bob was with him, but I can't remember for sure. Aubrey invited me to have dinner with him and Bob in the cafeteria the next day after the baccalaureate service. I agreed to do that and had a perfectly wonderful time getting better acquainted with Bob. It was May 25, Bob's birthday. It seemed that we never lacked for anything to say to each other. Aubrey stayed at La Sierra College that summer, and Bob returned to his home in San Gabriel and sold books to earn money for college. At different times during the summer, I would take the bus from Glendale to Pasadena to attend the Pasadena church and to visit my grandmother. She made a practice of inviting me for Sabbath dinner whenever I was able to come, and she also invited Bob Odell. He had a delightful, charming personality, and the times we spent together just flew by on wings. Ours was a totally platonic friendship, no touching whatsoever. He thought I was Aubrey's girl, and that was that. Once, Saturday night, Grandma invited us both to stay for supper, and after supper, I helped with the dishes. Aunt Nora and Aunt Marguerite were both in the kitchen with us, and Bob was somewhere else, but I can't remember where. Grandma said to me, "Daphne, have you told Bob you don't love Aubrey?" I said, "No, I haven't." "Well," Grandma said, "we're not going to invite him to our home anymore until you do, and you must do it tonight." So how was I going to tell Bob I didn't love Aubrey? Later that evening, we were sitting together in the swing in Grandma's back garden, and I said, "Bob, I have a problem. I need to tell Aubrey I don't love him. Can you give me some advice on how I should do it?" Well, things were on a roll after that. We talked so late that evening that Bob missed his bus back to San Gabriel. Grandma invited him to stay overnight. Neither of us slept very much that night. The next day was the day of George and Andy Cooter's wedding, and I had planned to go. Andy was our surgery supervisor and also our class sponsor. I wouldn't have missed her wedding for anything. So I invited Bob to come with me to attend the wedding. He protested that he hadn't shaved. I said, "Don't worry about that. You look fine. And anyway, everyone will be looking at the bride. So he went with me. After that, we saw each other on different occasions, and one day I received a letter from him telling how much he had enjoyed being with me on one of these occasions. He signed the letter, Love, Bob. He also said in the letter that he would like to see me sometime soon. I showed the letter to my cousin Dorothy, and she said, let's invite Bob and Jack, her boyfriend, to a dinner in the nurse's dormitory dinette. I thought that was a great idea, and we set the date for July 24. The men accepted our invitation, and the menu we served was something else. We served waffles, apple pie a la mode, peas, and Dorothy made some fudge. After dinner, Bob and I went for a walk on the hills of Glendale, and it was there, on one of those hills, that he kissed me for the first time. We returned from our walk and sat together on a sofa in the parlor of the nurse's dormitory. We were alone in the parlor, and the door was shut, but the top of the door had a glass pane. During the course of our conversation, Bob said, someday I'd like to marry you. And I said, why not now? 6 weeks later, on September 5, 1946, we were married in the new chapel of the nurse's dormitory, and we lived happily ever after. Our first daughter, Kathy, was born on November 5, 1947, a year and 2 months after our wedding. Jack was born on July 9, 1949, Marilyn on November 18, 1950. Helen was born on March 12, 1952, Dorothy on July 31, 1960, and Beth on August 19, 1962. And then I wanted to read some memories of their father by all the girls. My Memories of Dad by Marilyn Cook. Reading this made me brought tears to my eyes. My very first memory of Dad was when he literally saved my life, and I thought he was punishing me. I was eating ice cream and inhaled some of it and started to choke. I can remember Dad grabbing me up, turning me upside down and hanging me and hitting me on the back really hard. I remember screaming, I'm sorry, stop, Daddy! I'm sorry, stop, I won't do that anymore. I guess my guilt complex started very early in life. I have great memories of Sunday mornings when I was little. First, I remember that when Mom and Dad unlocked the bedroom door, that meant we could all come in and get in bed with them. We used to love doing that. After a big breakfast of waffles, we would all have family worship together. Then Dad would play fun little games with us. He used to take turns with all of us, putting us on his back and going on a drive in quotes. He would play fun little games with us. He used to take turns with all of us, putting us on his back and going on a drive around the living room until he had a flat tire. Then we would have to hang on for dear life while we put air in the tire. If we fell off, then it was the next person's turn. We used to laugh with delight over that little game. He also would sit us on his lap and try to tickle us with his unshaven face, but we would always say, Daddy, stop, you're too scratchy. Dad must have loved peanut butter, because when he did that, I remember the peanut butter breath. I remember that he used to call me Mare, and it always made me feel special when he called me that. Not too long ago, when I went to visit him at Rosehaven, this is when he was dying, I said, "Hi, Dad, it's Marilyn." And he said, "Hi, Mare." This was after he was not recognizing us too much anymore. That brought tears to my eyes. Dad was a walking encyclopedia. He knew so much about nature. I remember how he used to take us on trips out in nature, and he could name every flower, tree, and bird. At night, he would point out stars and constellations to us. One time, he showed us Orion and told us how Jesus was going to come through that constellation. After that, I used to love to look up there and imagine Jesus coming with all the angels. Once when we lived in Santa Maria, Dad kept talking about taking us to the mountains to play in the snow. We looked forward to that trip for a long time, and when we finally got to go, we had so much fun. We had inner tubes and found a great place to slide down this hill. We would connect several inner tubes together by hooking our legs around the person in the tube ahead of us and all slide down the hill together. I will never forget our trip back to Wisconsin when we went to pick up Dorothy and Beth at Aunt Winnie's. On the way home, Dad was trying to find a hotel late one night and was having a hard time finding one. He pulled into a gas station where Kathy, Helen, and I got out of the back of our Rambler station wagon to go to the bathroom. Dad was so tired that after he put the gas in the car, he got in and drove off down the road without us. When we came back out and discovered that he had left, we couldn't believe it. We waited and waited and he didn't come back. It was very late and the gas station was about to close. The lady there kept telling us that he would be back soon. She was going to let us go into the cafe and lay down on the seats in there. When he finally did come back, I don't really remember how long it had been, but to us it seemed like an eternity. When we heard his end of the story, we realized that he had more reason to be frightened than we did. He was driving down the road and kept feeling a breeze, like a window was open. Suddenly, he realized that the whole back of the station wagon was open, and we were not there. He quickly got turned around, and as he drove back, he saw a large object in the road and thought, "Oh no, they fell out the back of the car." As he drove on, he kept collecting pillows, blankets, and other things that had fallen out. How relieved we all were when he drove back into the gas station. I have memories of a dad who loved and cared for us and was very concerned for our spiritual lives. He gave us such a great foundation, and for that I am very grateful. He was never afraid to give us good advice and carried that even into our married lives. He became a great father figure for Ron and has helped him in so many ways in his ministry. I am so glad that God gave me such a wonderful father. I will always treasure the memories I have of the best dad in the whole world. And this is by Helen Nichols. The earliest memory I have of my father when I was about 18 months old and the family was taking a Sabbath afternoon walk through the apple orchard behind our house in Reedley, California. There was an irrigation canal running through the orchard, and as we stood at its edge, I was in my stroller. Marilyn pulled off her shoes and socks and threw them into the water. I remember seeing my father take a long stick and fish them out of the water. Another early memory was when I was about 2 years old, was on a Saturday night in our Hanford house while my dad was popping popcorn with a special popcorn pot and a separate hot plate, a tradition that continued throughout my childhood. I was standing in my high chair and watching, but wanted to get closer. As I tried to step down to the chair, which was closer, I tripped over the cord to the hot plate, pulling it face down on my bare back. As a pastor, my dad was often gone in the evenings, but Sunday mornings were for us kids. One of our favorite games was flat tire, where you would pretend to be a car and each arm and leg was a tire. We would each get a turn riding on his back, and partway around the room, one tire would go flat. One of the other kids would pump up the tire. The car would only go a bit further and have 2 tires go flat, then 3 tires, each time requiring pumping up. When he reached the couch, all 4 tires would go flat, and the tire pumper would pump all the tires, and then continue to pump until they exploded, and the car and the driver would be tossed onto the couch. We just loved that game, and like kids, we never could play enough of it. Another favorite game was I Think I Can Choo-Choo. This one involved lying on our back while we took our feet and made our legs pedal, I think, to imitate the bar connecting the wheels of the old-fashioned engines. The routine went like this. The train starts out at the train station, chug, 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 moves our legs slowly. Into the city, chug, 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 chug. Legs go faster along with the chugging. Into the country, chug, 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 chug. Legs and chugging go faster. Past the cornfield. Chug, chug, chug. Speeding up still more. Past the dairy farm. Chug, 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 chug. Up a hill. Chug, 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 chug. Legs begin to slow. Hill gets steeper. Chug, chug, chug. Not sure I can make it. Chug, chug, chug. A big sigh. Breathless. Legs moving slower and slower. I think I can, I think I can. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. We're almost to the top. I think I can. Now the legs are turning as fast as they can make them go. And we laughed with glee. Down the hill, past the firehouse, chug, 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 under the bridge, chug, 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 slowing a bit, into the city, chug, 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 slowing more, into the station, chug, 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 then a screech as the legs are stopped, and we are screaming again, and we are screaming again, again. My father and my mother were enjoying an evening in their outside, in their yard. paradise when he was saying, repeating to her a poem that my mother had written in one of her books, written by a Chinese author, because she wrote a book on Chinese literature. Finally, the word. And the poem went like this. This little strip of mine, twixt night and night, help me keep bright today. This little strip of light, twixt night and night, let me keep bright today, and let no shadow of tomorrow, nor sorrow from the dead yesterday, gainsay my happiness today. And if tomorrow shall be sad, or never come at all, I've had at least today. They were outdoors, roasting marshmallows, making a fire, and enjoying an evening together before they were driving back to Sacramento the next day. And my father was killed that night. The next day, the next day. And I thought my mother was hurt. The teenagers were driving, and the sun was in their eyes, and they ran into the car. And my father was killed, and my mother was hurt. And if tomorrow shall be sad, or never come at all, at least I've had today. What I look forward to the most. I tell Jesus every night when I go to bed, is to see your face and the face of God.